Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, what is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. And we are going to talk about, we've done this video the last couple years, so we are going to talk about our dream off season for the Indianapolis Colts. This obviously comes before the Colts have even announced who they are hiring at defensive coordinator. So we're going to throw that in there as well here right at the beginning. So we're not going to necessarily, since it is so early and, free agency is still a couple months away, we're not going to necessarily name any names at this moment for either free agency or the draft. We're just going to talk about some positions we'd like to see the Colts primarily focus on when it comes to free agency and primarily focus on when it comes to the draft. And there's going to be a little bit of overlap between a couple different positions. And then we're going to name also the top three guys that we'd like to see the Colts re-sign. The three, I guess you could say, priority guys for us. So without further ado, let's start here, Derek, with the defensive coordinator. Now, we have two names in mind that we'd like to see the Colts hire here, maybe this next week or who knows. Hopefully sooner rather than later when it comes to it. And obviously the Colts have interviewed 5 guys now, most recently Dennis Allen on Friday. So Derek, out of the 5 candidates, who are the 2 guys that we would say we'd like to see the Colts hire above the rest?
I think you and I have come to the conclusion, man, that if the Indianapolis Colts hire either Wink Martindale or Dennis Allen, then you and I would both be pretty doggone happy with the Indianapolis Colts over this off season. I think you and I have kind of come to the conclusion that these two would be the best options at defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, in our personal opinion. And, hey, that would be perfectly fine. And we think that these guys would hold players accountable. We think these guys would be more aggressive in their approach and on defense. And we think that it's going to ultimately lead to more good things for the Indianapolis Colts if we were to get these guys specifically.
Yeah, and both guys that you notice are very, very aggressive in their approach defensively. I mean, basically the polar opposite of Gus Bradley. It's less react, more attack. And guys, we've talked about all of these candidates ad nauseum at this point. So go check out our couple different videos talking about them if you want to hear more about these different coaches. But yeah, I think we'd be perfectly content with either of these 2 guys. I think those 2 are the top guys right now that you would like to see. I mean, both guys, Derek, that have had proven track records as of recent at defensive coordinator, whether it's at the collegiate level or NFL level or a little bit of both in Wink Martindale's case. So, yeah, I think defensive coordinator, either of those would be fine. I think it'd be a very welcome change and a breath of fresh air for this defense that is in desperate need of that. So, yeah, and also, especially with Wink Martindale, Derek, do you change a lot of personnel on that side of the ball? Does he want a completely different type of defense in terms of some guys that are there that maybe he doesn't want to build around, so there's all those questions that come with a new defensive coordinator. But I think either of these guys would definitely be great. I mean, you already heard my opinion on Wink just because of the personality, and I think that's kind of what this defense needs. But yeah, I think we'd be happy with either of these 2 guys. But then moving on, Derek, to the free agents, and obviously defensive coordinator is going to fill some of these, it's going to be the first domino to fall, and then things are going to fall in line within that. But if we're kind of focusing on a few positions, Derek, that we'd like to see the Colts go out and get some proven talent to add to their roster, what would be some of those positions specifically that you would like to see the Colts primarily focus on first?
Yeah, as far as free agency goes, offensive line, I think, is definitely something you need to continue to try to get. Despite some of the uncertainty with some of the positions for the Indianapolis Colts on the offensive line, you feel like you've added enough depth from the last few years to at least be able to have guys that for sure can fill those positions. But now you have to reload. You have to reload the depth pieces because a lot of those guys that were depth pieces for you this last year had to be full-time starters for a good chunk of the year and now have to probably be that at the start of this next season. So, it's a great idea for the Indianapolis Colts to be looking in free agency for some solid backup offensive linemen to be able to fill those voids, because you want to be able to try and get people in the draft that are going to be guys that will fill more immediate roles for you right away. You want to be more aggressive in not only your free agency approach, but your draft approach this year. You want to get the difference makers, the guys that are going to make those big plays down the stretch. And there's a lot of different ways that Chris Ballard could do that. Secondary, no doubt. The secondary unit outside of a few guys, it's extremely young, especially in the cornerback room. I know Kenny Moore, obviously, but he's almost on his way out. And, you have a bunch of young guys in there that are still struggling to, stay healthy and put it all together. And even in the safety room, whether or not you bring Julian Blackmon back or not, you're still going to have a lot of young guys on this core unit that are going to need to figure it out. So, secondary, definitely. Tight end, you're definitely going to need to probably double dip in tight end this year. Cody, you and I, we've sat here at just beating this to hell that virtually nobody on this tight end room should still have a job, to be honest with you. They don't really do anything to improve the team. You can make the argument for Mo Alley Cox to get a veteran minimum, maybe. You could even argue potentially a Will Mallory only because of the fact that he hasn't played. But then again, that might point to something more important as to, why aren't you playing? Are you really that much worse than what some people might think? But, this tight end room needs a whole revamp. They need some proven guys at the tight end position to come in, both at the collegiate level and at the free agent level in the NFL already, and the linebacker room too. Even if you bring EJ Speed back for some reason, it still would be a good idea to try to find some linebackers that can continue to be good depth pieces for you.
Yeah, I think for all those different reasons, O-line, obviously you just don't know the future with some of these veterans, whether it's Ryan Kelly, his contract is up. Is he going to stay in Indianapolis? We don't know at this point, right? A lot of people would say it's time to move on from Ryan Kelly. He's been injured and he deserves to go to a contender. And then, when talking about things like the secondary, for example, or even like the linebacker room in general, I think, Derek, you have some guys that have been in the league for a little bit of time. Like you have your Kenny Moores, you have your Zaire Franklins who have been here, been at the NFL. But Derek, all these guys have been with you. Like they've been in your building, and we know the culture problems the Colts have. So I think getting outside veteran guys who, as Chris Ballard put it, are fresh blood into that, aren't guys that have been in this losing culture for the last number of years, but are coming out from different cultures and are bringing that into this locker room and bringing a freshness in it, right? Where, maybe there's a little bit of healthy tension that you absolutely need in there. And real quick, going back to the O-line, I mean, say you do move on from Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith, say those two things. They're not, for whatever reason, they are not on your team next year. I mean, I just think, Derek, it is always wise to continue to have competition, especially for young guys. You don't know with some of these guys, so that's why I would not be mad at all if you added some serious competition to right tackle for Matt Gonzalez. And you don't just hand him that position, Derek, because we've seen the Colts hand guys positions before, and they come back to blow up in their face. So I do think that would make a lot of sense. And just from a pure depth standpoint, that would make sense. And you're absolutely right. Tight end position just needs a complete revamp. I mean, a complete overhaul, to say the least. I mean, it was historically bad. It was really, really bad. So you add a solid veteran in there, and then you draft a guy. I think this is a position where if there's any position probably on this roster, this is the one to double dip in. And I think you got to take that approach that all the good franchises do and all the good GMs do, right? When they have a position of need, you go and you don't just address it, you address it and then some in both avenues, right? And obviously Chris Ballard has not done that, and he has not been a good GM in those ways. And He's admitted that, right? So now it's time to put your money where your mouth is, right? And this would be a great opportunity for the Colts to do that. Look, I'm not looking for the Colts to go out and sign, a tight end that's going to be, an all pro. But I think just signing a veteran guy in there that's competent would be a major upgrade from what you had last year. So, yeah, you got to completely rebuild that room. But the other ones, especially O-line, that's more depth. Linebacker could be a starter potentially. And then secondary could be some guys that could be pushing for some starting positions as well. So, yeah, you got to get some fresh blood in this defense, 100%. No doubt in my mind at all. And just on this roster in general, right? You've been very stagnant with your own guys. Got to add some fresh guys from different buildings. So, yep, when it comes to free agents, that makes a whole lot of sense. And obviously the Colts have some guys of their own who are set to hit free agency. Who would be some guys in your mind? And obviously, when you're looking at it, there's going to be guys that you inevitably don't sign. But if you could name kind of the top 3 guys that you think the Colts could re-sign and you potentially would want them to re-sign, who would those guys be for you?
Will Fries is 100% the guy that we need to re-sign. Like I said, when he wasn't at guard this year, our offensive line was terrible at that position all year after. And Will Fries was playing at a all-pro level before his injury, and he needs to be a guy. And not to mention, you're already going to question if Ryan Kelly is going to be the guy going forward at center, and you don't know whether or not Braden Smith is going to be remaining with the team long-term or not. And so let's not make it 3 offensive line issues. Let's only keep it at 2 and just maintain the group that we do still have available. And Will Fries is young. He's experienced. He's been at right guard ever since he's come into the league now, and he's the perfect guy to keep there. Dio Adangbo, again, you're in question marks of your defensive line. You want to try to keep as many depth pieces there as you can, especially since it feels like the edge group is pretty top heavy in the draft this year. You don't really want to be looking to fish for an edge rusher unless you're getting one at a high value. So keeping the guys that you do have available to you right now would probably be the best thing. And Julian Blackmon, too, if you can get him for the right deal. I think that would be something good, too. Again, if you don't re-sign Blackmon, then you have to have a plan in place for that. You have to be, looking at somebody in the first or second round of the draft this year to bring in, or else, you can't not bring in somebody in to replace Blackmon if you're not going to bring him back. But if you did bring Blackmon back, that is one less immediate top heavy need that you would need throughout the period of everything. Again, you would still look to try to get some veterans in that room, or even, if you didn't bring in Blackmon again, even with that, you might even double dip at the safety position in the offseason. But Blackmon could definitely alter what the Indianapolis Colts would do in the offseason at the safety position if he came back. As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Now, what is PrizePicks? PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
And I think that would be stupid if they did that. I think it would be stupid if they re-signed him and believed he could be the guy. To be real with you, I just think that's a poor plan. That's, again, relying on him to stay healthy when to give him his kudos. He played through an injury this year. But Derek, he routinely has missed time. And it just, for me, I'm not going to put my eggs in that basket that he's going to stay healthy and going to play at a high level. It's either he's hurt and he's out there not playing at a good level, or he plays well and then he gets hurt. I mean, really, 2023 is about the only time where he's done a little bit of both, and even then he still missed the final couple games of the season. So I just cannot rely on him. So I do think even if you did re-sign him, I think you go and try to get a top safety here in the draft, because he has made it clear, Derek, just by the amount of times he's missed and just, frankly, a disappointing season this year, that I just don't really have faith that he can be the guy long term. So I think the Colts should invest in both ways when it comes to that, right? Even if you do re-sign Julian Blackmon, I'm not re-signing him, guaranteeing him a starting spot. I think he has to go out there and he has to earn it, and he's got to stay healthy. So that's just my opinion. If you're truly, really banking on talking about the competition thing and you're really adamant about that, I don't see how you could try to run it back with just Julian Blackmon and no true competition in there. Heck, Derek, that's why Blackmon played through it, because there was literally nobody else out there that could play at a semi-decent level, right? So he had to play through the injury, and I think that would just be negligent. It'd be Chris Ballard-like, but it would just be another stupid decision, honestly. Even if you did re-sign him and you say, okay, he was injured, didn't play great, but we're going to give him another chance here, fully healthy. But I do think you also throw in the contingent of he hasn't been healthy, and he's getting a little, he's still in his mid-20s, but Derek, there's a reason you only re-signed him on a one-year deal, on a prove-it deal last year. I would think it'd be a similar type of deal if you did re-sign him. And to me, that doesn't scream, we 100% believe Julian's our guy moving forward. So that would just be my opinion when it comes to that. But I do like Julian Blackmon, and, did give him a lot of crap this year. And once he found out about the injury, it's like, okay, I give him a little bit more grace, but it still obviously wasn't at the level you wanted it to be. The whole defense wasn't where you needed it to be. And that is in part due to the fact that you just didn't have anybody behind him. So he kind of just had to play through it. But, and then on the devil's advocate, Derek, if he didn't play through it, then we're talking about how he's injury prone, right? So it's like he can't win there, when it comes to him. So, but, bottom line is, Derek, as, maybe unfair as it is in certain ways to criticize some parts of his play because of the injury, also you look at and you say, to be a true long-term piece, you have to stay healthy and play at a high level. And Blackmon, when you look at the first couple of years of his career with the Colts, really outside of 2020, he hasn't been able to do that on a consistent basis year in and year out.
Right. Yeah. It's been a struggle, and for part of it was because of injuries. And, even when he first came into the league, it was if Chase Young hadn't done what he did his first year, then Julian Blackmon was going to be defensive rookie of the year. And it feels like ever since then, unlike 2023, was a better year for Blackmon, because Blackmon, stat wise started finally becoming, what we thought he was going to be. And then obviously, but he still missed a few games that last season. And then in 2024 now, he was available, albeit was injured for a good chunk of the year, was still available. But then it felt like the performance kind of tailed off a little bit. A bunch of missed tackles and, just not as much production in certain areas as you would have liked. So, yeah, I mean, as far as going into it, I mean, you 100% need to continue to try to bolster that room in any way that you can.
Some real competition, right? You just can't hand guys things anymore. So even if you brought him back, yeah, I think you got to add some serious competition. I think you go high in the draft and you swing for the fences, man. You get some guys in there that are some young talent that you can hopefully develop with your defensive coordinator, whoever that is. And obviously they're going to have a say in that. So yeah, I definitely think when it comes to Blackman, that is an interesting one because you can see both sides of it. But bottom line is, Derek, he has missed a good chunk of games in his career with the Colts. So you got to kind of weigh that, and if you do re-sign him, it's with the knowledge that he is likely not going to play in all 17 games. I mean, that's just the reality of it. All right, so that is some guys. I mean, obviously you throw in some special teams guys like Grant Stewart. I mean, you want to have him, Ashton Doolin. I think they're just core special teams guys. These other guys we're talking about more the starters that you'd like to see potentially coming back. And then we'll move on, Derek, to the draft. We'll close it out here with the draft. What are some positions that you would like to see the Colts address primarily in this upcoming draft in April?
Number one thing is the tight end room. Again, the tight end room, it's so deep, Cody. The top 5 or 6 guys in this class are all guys that, can provide you with some stability. I'll be completely honest. I think that there's a huge drop off between, I'd say the top 2 are elite. The third one is really good. And then the 4th and 5th, maybe even 6th one are like, they're good players. They're not really great at anything, but they're good at stuff. And I feel like if the Indianapolis Colts leave out of the first 2 rounds without a tight end, I will literally throw something at a wall. Like, I mean, it's be the dumbest thing in the world for Ballard to not in some way find one of these great tight ends at the beginning of this draft to bolster up that room because it needs it.
Right. When's the last time that you have had a guy, and again, these are all, the draft can be a crapshoot, but when's you've actually believed you've had a guy that can be like a legitimate top 10 tight end? He has that potential. Like, obviously we said potentially Jelani Woods, but he's missed 2 years
been injured
in a row
over the last 2 years.
But truly,
so
like, when you haven't
really
invested,
had a chance.
the last time you invested was that draft, right? And any like reasonable amount of draft capital within the first couple rounds was 2022, and that's been it.
And that was even a 3rd rounder too, right, Cody? Like, that was a 3rd rounder. That wasn't even, a 1st or 2nd round. I mean, that's a 3rd round. And, a lot of times 3rd rounders, they don't really, go on to really do a lot at times, So like, it's hit or miss when it comes to those guys. And even with Jelani Woods, because again, Jelani Woods prior to that season had only had a year and a half's worth of experience at the position. Right. So, right. I mean, this isn't, and his production wasn't anything to go off of that. The only reason you drafted him was because here's a 6'6" guy at 255 pounds that can run a 4.6, legitimate 4.6, and is the most athletic tight end that we've ever seen come in the league. And that's what you were banking off of. You were banking off of the fact that he was going to continue to get better, and with his athletic ability, he was going to be able to transform into something. Well, we originally saw that he could. We just don't know whether or not he's going to remain healthy. And that's the biggest problem. And you don't have that problem, at least what we've seen so far, with guys like Warren or guys like Fannin, guys like that we haven't seen injury histories on those guys, so that's another reason you want to bring them in. Second position, running back. I think it goes without saying, Jonathan Taylor, we know he's going to miss some games every once in a while. He has a few times where he gets banged up. He gets utilized almost as much as anybody else in the league, and his ankles have always been a problem. So it's always good to get another guy that's going to go in there, help maybe take a few snaps away from him every once in a while, and a guy that is going to be able to do some of the things that Jonathan Taylor isn't really well renowned at doing. Pass blocking, making catches out of the backfield, which again, Jonathan Taylor is capable of doing that, but he's had his struggles. And, Cody, this is a extremely deep running back room. There's a legitimate, maybe a dozen guys, Cody, that could be a number 2 starter for this Colts team right now. Literally a dozen. And so if you come out of this draft and you don't get any of those top running backs, then you're doing a huge disservice to your running back room. Secondary, you obviously need to continue to keep doing that. You need to continue to keep bringing competition into that room. And then linebacker could also be one. But the problem with me, Cody, is if you're not getting a linebacker within the first 3 rounds, then there's no point for me in getting another linebacker in this draft class. You have so many other guys on your roster that are already going to be backups that are capable of that. You don't need to be investing 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round linebackers. I know that that's where your 2 starters right now got drafted at. I totally get that. But it took years for those guys to actually get to be good enough to be starters in the league. If you're going to draft a linebacker, draft high. Draft high. Get them in the 1st or 2nd, possibly even the 3rd round. I don't think there really would be one in the 3rd round that's worth it, but you could get one in that 1st or 2nd round if they're one of the top 2 or 3 guys. But outside of that, I wouldn't be looking to go to linebacker as much. But and obviously there's so many other positions you could talk about with maybe trying to get somebody, but those are the 4 that I think of.
Yeah, I mean, devil's advocate would say, like you even pointed it out. I mean, look, you found guys, and I understand they wouldn't come in and be a starter right away, but there's one position Ballard has done a good job at. It's linebacker. So just bring in more guys that can contribute on special teams. I mean, just go get. I mean, I think that's what those day 3 picks are in a lot of ways. It's betting on the traits a lot of times, right? And seeing if you can, develop some of these guys, some guys that come from small schools, that you can potentially develop and, bring them into the league. And they obviously won't start right away, but they maybe start on the practice squad or special teams, and you just continue to do that. So I'm always kind of inclined, based off of Ballard's history, to do at least one guy that you bring in, because who knows? Maybe he could be a core special teamer one day, or maybe he could be a guy that eventually does get into a larger role. Who's to say, right? And even, heck, you drafted Jalen Carlisle in round 5 last year, and he was a really good linebacker in coverage. So I wouldn't be mad if you drafted a guy, on, round 4, round 5. I'd be totally okay with that. I mean, heck, if you like some guys, why not take some shots at them? I mean, typically, Derek, some 6th and 7th round guys, I mean, a lot of times they don't even make your final roster. So why not give them an opportunity to prove it, So I wouldn't be upset about that at all. I don't know, when it comes to, like, for example, would the Colts look to potentially, talking about some depth, I would assume, and we don't know with Raekwon Davis, but, could the Colts release him? Will they be kind of looking for another quality backup interior guy? I could see that being a possibility, Derek. Maybe in the, day 2, day 3 range, just getting a guy in there that can, give Grover Stewart some opportunity to get some rest, because we know how good of a one tech he is, but you always need guys that can be in there. And I just don't think Raekwon Davis was that great last year, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't mind that at all if the Colts went and did that. I mean, also, I know the Colts still probably, obviously believe in, a guy like A.D. Mitchell, but who's to say, Derek? I mean, he didn't give you the production you wanted last year. And, maybe you just look to continue to add competition to him and say, hey, your job's not safe, man. Like, just because we drafted you in round 2 last year doesn't mean your job is safe. You got to put in a lot of work, man, and you got to prove that you belong on this roster. So I'm just looking at, like, it feels like the Colts add some of these positions about every year. So just kind of throwing a few of those in there as well, that I would not be shocked if the Colts took a guy there, maybe in the mid rounds to late rounds there Would not be shocked at all. But I absolutely agree with you. I think tight end, running back, and secondary is probably the top 3 needs you need to address in the first couple rounds of this draft. But yeah, we'll have to see, man, when it comes to that. But yeah, guys, that's kind of our dream offseason as it stands right now in the middle of January. So let us know all those things in the comments down below. Is there any other positions, any other coaches, any other things that we haven't talked about that you would like to see the Colts do this offseason to make it the best offseason possible, in your opinion? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.